Grand Admiral Kthar stood motionless before the holographic display. His four eyes narrowed in concentration as they tracked the data streams flowing across the projection. The chamber around him was silent save for the occasional beep from monitoring stations and the soft breathing of the dozen high-ranking Galactic Federation officials who sat in a semicircle behind him. "Replay the anomaly detection sequence," Kthar ordered, his voice carefully modulated to betray none of the unease that had been growing within him for the past several rotation cycles. "At once, Admiral," responded the ship's AI, its voice a pleasant contralto designed to soothe even in crisis situations. The holographic display flickered and reset, showing a three-dimensional map of Sector 19, colloquially known as Hazard Zone 7, among Federation navigators. No Federation species had established permanent presence there, as it contained nothing but dead worlds, planets too hostile to sustain any known form of carbon or silicon-based life. "Focus on the energy signatures detected on Tartarus 4, Kthar said. The map zoomed in on a gray, turbulent-looking planet with violent atmospheric patterns clearly visible even from orbit. Blinking red indicators appeared at three distinct locations on the planet's surface. "Impossible," muttered General Forlag, the massive Draconian rising from his seat and moving to stand beside Kthar. His scaled hide glinted dully in the blue light of the hologram, and the ceremonial battle scars across his face tightened as he frowned. "That must be sensor error. Nothing survives on Tartarus 4. The gravity alone would crush most species to paste." Kthar's upper eyes remained fixed on the display, while his lower pair shifted to observe Forlag. "That was my initial assessment as well, General. However, our sensor arrays have been triple-checked. These readings are accurate." "What exactly are we seeing?" asked a Cygnian representative, her feathered crest rising in what Kthar recognized as nervous agitation. Kthar gestured with a slender hand, and the hologram zoomed in further. "These energy signatures match known patterns of Terran fusion reactors. Small scale, but definitely artificial. And they've been active for at least 6 standard cycles." A ripple of murmurs passed through the gathered officials. "Terrans," Forlag practically spat the word. "Always unpredictable. But even for them, this defies logic. Tartarus 4 has surface gravity of nearly 8 g, constant sulfuric acid rain that would dissolve standard protective gear in minutes, and electromagnetic storms that disable most shielding technology. Don't forget the radiation levels," added science advisor Tlani, her voice carrying the precise, measured tones of her Xylar heritage that she shared with Kthar. "Fatal exposure within 17 minutes without specialized protection that would be too cumbersome for practical activity." "And yet," Kthar said softly, "these readings suggest a sustained Terran presence." Forlag's reptilian features contorted in what passed for a smile in his species. All teeth and predatory intent. A secret military installation, perhaps? Some extreme resource extraction operation? Possibly, Kthar conceded, though his analytical mind found both explanations lacking. The Federation had been monitoring human expansion with cautious interest for decades. The species was young by galactic standards, but remarkably adaptable and disconcertingly resilient. They had spread through their local sector at a modest but steady pace, establishing colonies on worlds that other species would consider marginally habitable at best. But this, building installations on a death world like Tartarus 4, was beyond even the known parameters of Terran eccentricity. "We need more information," Kthar decided. "Enhance the resolution on those energy signatures. Are there any communication patterns being broadcast?" The AI worked silently for a moment before responding. "No detectable communications, Admiral. However, analysis indicates these energy patterns fluctuate in a manner consistent with regular usage rather than automated processes." "And what are the other hazard zone planets?" Forlag demanded. "Styx 6 and Acheron 9 in particular." The hologram shifted, displaying 2 more worlds. One a seething mass of radiation storms around an unstable star, the other a frozen hell of methane ice. Similar readings, the AI confirmed. low-power energy signatures consistent with Terran technology. One anomaly could be explained away, Kthar said slowly. 3 cannot. He turned to face the assembled council, his expression grave. We need direct observation. I propose sending our most advanced stealth observer craft to Tartarus 4. It's the closest of the 3 worlds to our current position, and its atmospheric conditions, while extreme, provide the best cover for a close approach. Forlag's massive tail thumped against the deck. I concur. Whatever the Terrans are doing on these death worlds, it cannot be benign. We must assess the potential threat immediately. Kthar noticed how quickly Forlag had jumped to framing this as a security issue, but he couldn't entirely disagree. The Terrans' capacity for violence was well documented, both against other species and, most disturbingly, against themselves. Their home world's history was a tapestry of conflict, with periods of global warfare using increasingly devastating weapons. Even their entertainment media glorified combat and competition to a degree that most Federation psychologists found pathological. The Council voted unanimously to deploy the Observer, the Federation's most sophisticated autonomous stealth vessel, to Tartarus 4. As the meeting adjourned, Kthar found himself lingering at the holographic display, staring at the angry red dots on the nightmarish world. What could the Terrans possibly want there? What resources or strategic value could justify establishing facilities in such an environment? You're overthinking this, Kthar, Forlag rumbled beside him. The Draconian had remained as well, his massive form casting long shadows in the dim chamber lighting. Am I? Kthar responded, not taking his eyes from the display. Humans are a blunt instrument, Forlag said dismissively. They've likely found some valuable mineral or element and are willing to endure extreme conditions to acquire it. Or they're testing weapons that are too dangerous for populated systems. Perhaps, Kthar conceded, but I can't help but feel we're missing something obvious. Something distinctly human. Forlag snorted. Well, your observer will bring us answers soon enough. Then we can decide whether these apes need to be contained before they hurt themselves or others. Kthar finally turned to regard his military counterpart. Let's not jump to conclusions, General. The Terrans have proven reasonable diplomatic partners thus far. Whatever they're doing, there may be a logical explanation that poses no threat to Federation interests. You Xylars and your endless optimism, Forlag chuckled darkly. I prefer to prepare for the worst. It's kept my species alive for 12 million cycles. With that, the massive reptilian turned and lumbered from the chamber, leaving Kthar alone with his thoughts and the slowly rotating hologram of worlds no sane species would ever willingly visit. The Observer sliced through the upper atmosphere of Tartarus 4, its advanced hull material already beginning to corrode under the assault of aerosolized sulfuric acid. The autonomous vessel adjusted its descent vector, compensating for the crushing gravitational pull that would have liquefied the internal organs of any biological pilot. Within its processing core, the AI piloting the vessel dispassionately noted that environmental conditions were exceeding even the extreme parameters in its database. Surface temperature, 87 degrees Celsius. Atmosphere pressure, 93 times Federation standard. Gravity, 7.6 g. Wind speed, variable, with gusts reaching 340 kilometers per hour. Acid concentration and precipitation, 32%. Radiation levels, fluctuating between 4,000 and 9,000 millisieverts per hour as electromagnetic storms rolled across the landscape. By all established knowledge, nothing should be able to function in such conditions, let alone establish a permanent presence. The Observer activated its full stealth suite as it descended through the cloud layer. Visibility dropped to near zero as it entered the perpetual acid storm that blanketed the planet. Only through a combination of gravimetric, thermal, and electromagnetic sensing could the vessel navigate at all. After 47 minutes of turbulent descent, the Observer broke through the lower cloud boundary. The landscape that resolved in its sensors was nightmarish, a hellscape of jagged black rock formations, flowing rivers of corrosive chemicals, and occasional geysers of superheated steam erupting from fissures in the ground. Massive lightning bolts, some extending for kilometers, constantly arced across the sky, creating electromagnetic interference that forced the observer to repeatedly recalibrate its sensors. The vessel oriented itself toward the nearest energy signature and proceeded at low altitude, using terrain features for additional concealment. The interference was so severe that it was within 3 kilometers of the target before its optical sensors could provide useful data. What the observer recorded would send shockwaves through the Federation High Command. The Terran facility was not, as Forlag had suggested, a heavily shielded bunker or automated mining operation. It was an open-air training complex sprawling across nearly 2 square kilometers of tortured landscape. A series of interconnected structures sat at its center, protected by what appeared to be modified atmospheric shields that managed the worst of the acid rain, but did nothing to alleviate the crushing gravity or toxic atmosphere. Most shocking were the humans themselves. Hundreds of them, moving about in the open, many wearing only minimal protective gear that left significant portions of their skin exposed to the caustic air. Their bodies gleamed with sweat that evaporated almost instantly in the heat, leaving salt crystals that seemed to irritate their skin, causing redness and minor blistering, discomfort they appeared to simply ignore. The observer hovered at the perimeter, recording everything as its analytical systems struggled to make sense of what it was seeing. A large group of humans, approximately 200 individuals, were engaged in what could only be described as extreme physical training. They ran in formation across the rocky terrain, each carrying what appeared to be additional weights on their already gravity-challenged bodies. Their movements were labored but determined, faces contorted with effort, but showing no signs of surrender to the punishing conditions. At the center of the complex, another group practiced combat maneuvers, using the natural hazards of the environment as obstacles and weapons. The observer recorded one remarkable sequence where trainees redirected flows of naturally occurring acid using portable energy shields, creating barriers or offensive weapons against holographic targets. Elsewhere, humans sat in pools of the planet's toxic mud, wearing breathing apparatus that appeared deliberately designed to restrict oxygen intake. Instructors monitored vital signs while shouting what the observer's linguistic systems identified as motivational phrases, though the content seemed paradoxically focused on embracing rather than avoiding pain and discomfort. The observer's attention was drawn to a sudden commotion near one of the training fields. A trainee had collapsed, apparently from exhaustion or environmental injury. The response was both efficient and disturbing. Medical personnel quickly converged on the fallen human, providing immediate treatment while recording extensive data on the nature of the failure. Most telling was that the training around them continued without significant pause, the fallen individual becoming, it seemed, merely another data point in some larger experiment in human endurance. As the observer continued its surveillance, it captured audio from an instructor addressing a group of visibly exhausted trainees. "This isn't about survival," the human shouted, his voice distorted by a breathing apparatus but still forceful. "Any idiot can survive with enough technology. This is about thriving in conditions that would kill most species, about making these environments your weapon when the time comes. If you can fight here, you can fight anywhere in the galaxy." The observer, programmed with initiative within mission parameters, decided to extend its surveillance to capture more context about this apparent military training program. It adjusted its position to observe a different section of the facility, where trainees were using what appeared to be energy weapons in a precision firing exercise conducted during an active electromagnetic storm, conditions that would render most targeting systems useless. As it maneuvered around a particularly tall rock formation, a freak lightning bolt struck nearby, momentarily overloading the observer's stealth systems. The resulting energy spike was minimal, but in an environment where the Terrans were clearly attuned to detecting anomalies, it proved sufficient. Alarms blared across the training facility. The observer's sensors detected multiple targeting systems locking onto its position. With its primary mission of data collection already accomplished and self-preservation protocols activating, The vessel immediately initiated emergency withdrawal procedures. As it rapidly ascended through the churning atmosphere, the observer directed its long-range sensors toward the two other death worlds in the hazard zone. Brief scans confirmed similar energy signatures and structures on both Styx 6 and Acheron 9, though details were impossible to discern at such distance. The observer had just cleared the upper atmosphere when its sensors detected a high-energy weapon discharge from the surface. Moments later, its transmission to Federation Command ended abruptly, though not before successfully uploading the complete surveillance data package. "This is insanity," whispered Science Advisor Tlani, her normally composed features slack with shock as the final images from the observer played across the command center's main screen. The emergency session of the High Command had been called immediately upon receipt of the observer's data. Now, as the recording ended, a profound silence fell over the chamber. Thar stood perfectly still, his four eyes half closed in the Xylar expression of deep concentration. Forlag paced the chamber like a caged predator, his powerful tail lashing back and forth in agitation. "Play it again," Thar ordered. "Focus on the segment with the instructor's speech." The footage replayed, zooming in on the human drill instructor berating his trainees in the hellish environment of Tartarus 4. The audio enhancement filters clarified his words. "This isn't about survival. Any idiot can survive with enough technology. This is about thriving in conditions that would kill most species. About making these environments your weapon when the time comes." "They're preparing for war," Forlag declared, stopping his pacing to gesture at the frozen image. "This is clearly military training of the most extreme kind." "But war against whom?" asked Admiral Zivar of the Diplomatic Corps, her translucent appendages rippling with concern. "The Federation has maintained peaceful relations with Earth and its colonies for decades." "Perhaps not the Federation," Thar said slowly, "but something else." Dr. Mara Sun, the Federation's leading xenobiologist, stepped forward. The diminutive scientist activated her own display, which showed detailed physiological readings taken from the humans in the observer's footage. "What you're all missing," she said, "is that this shouldn't be possible at all. Let me explain exactly what these humans are enduring." She displayed a cross-section of human cellular structure. At the gravity levels recorded on Tartarus 4, human bones should fracture under their own weight. Their organs should be crushed. Blood vessels should rupture. Yet these subjects are not merely surviving. They're engaging in strenuous physical activity that would tax their systems even in Earth-normal conditions. The display shifted to show atmospheric composition. The air they're breathing, even through filtration apparatus, contains levels of toxins that should cause immediate respiratory distress and neurological damage. The ambient radiation would cause cellular degradation and DNA damage within minutes. The electromagnetic interference should disrupt their own bioelectrical systems. And yet, Thar observed, they train there deliberately. By choice. "Exactly," Dr. Sun confirmed. "This goes beyond normal adaptation. Even with their known biological resilience, humans shouldn't be able to function in these environments. They're somehow conditioning their bodies to endure conditions that defy biological possibility." General Forlag slammed a clawed fist on the table. "The how is less important than the why. These are military preparations, plain and simple." Thar finally turned to address the council directly. "Let's examine what we know about Terran history and psychology. Their species evolved on a world with extreme environmental diversity, from Arctic regions to deserts, high mountains to deep oceans. Their prehistory shows constant adaptation to changing conditions." He gestured, and the display showed historical images from Earth. Primitive humans hunting megafauna, surviving ice ages, crossing oceans in fragile vessels, scaling mountains without equipment. More tellingly, Thar continued, their recorded history shows a pattern of deliberately seeking out hardship as a form of improvement. The display showed humans engaging in various extreme sports, climbing sheer cliff faces, diving to ocean depths, running ultramarathons across deserts. "They have cultural concepts that most Federation species find bizarre," Tlani added. Phrases like "what doesn't kill you makes you stronger" and "embrace the suck" reveal a psychological orientation that actually values hardship as transformative. In their military history, Forlag interjected shows a species that has repeatedly survived planetary-scale conflicts of their own making. Nuclear devastation, climate collapse, biological warfare. Each time, they've emerged more adaptable and technologically advanced. New images filled the screen: wasteland battlefields, mushroom clouds, flooded cities. This is a species, Kthar said quietly, that nearly destroyed itself multiple times, yet treats these near-extinction events as mere growing pains. A species that sees environments that would kill any rational being as challenges to be overcome. A species that deliberately trains in conditions that, by all scientific understanding, should be lethal. The implications hung in the air, unspoken but clear to all present. If humans could train effectively in environments like Tartarus 4, what military advantage would that convey? What enemies were they preparing to face that would necessitate such extreme measures? The council erupted into heated debate. Are they genetically modifying themselves? Could they be post-humans, some kind of synthetic evolution we haven't detected? What if they aren't carbon-based life, as we understand it at all? Enough. Kthar's voice cut through the chaos. Speculation without data is useless. We need to understand their purpose before we can assess the threat level. Forlag's eyes narrowed. The threat is obvious, Admiral. A species that can fight effectively in environments where we cannot even survive holds an insurmountable tactical advantage. Imagine a conflict where they could simply retreat to worlds like these, regroup, and launch attacks while we remain unable to pursue. Or imagine, Kthar countered, the defensive value of having such allies if we ever faced a threat from beyond known space. We must not let fear drive us to hasty conclusions. What do you propose, Admiral? Asked Admiral Zivar. Kthar considered for a moment. A more direct approach. Not military, but diplomatic in nature. You can't be serious, Forlag rumbled. You want to send diplomats to that hellscape? Not to Tartarus 4, Kthar clarified. To Acheron 9. It's the least immediately lethal of the training worlds we've identified. We'll disguise our approach as a research vessel that's encountered difficulties, something plausible that would explain our presence in the hazard zone. And the purpose of this mission? Admiral Zivar asked. To observe more closely, certainly, Kthar replied, but also to make contact if possible, to understand their purpose directly rather than through speculation. This is foolishness, Forlag growled. We should be preparing defensive measures, not extending handshakes. And if you're wrong, General, Kthar challenged, if we initiate hostile action against a species capable of thriving in environments we can barely survive long enough to die in, strategic logic suggests that understanding their intentions is the more prudent first step. After hours of heated debate, the Council narrowly approved Kthar's proposal. Ambassador Lyravale, a Cygnian with exceptional diplomatic credentials, would lead a small delegation to Acheron 9, accompanied by a scientific team and a minimal security detail. Their cover would be a research vessel studying exotic particle formations that had experienced drive system failures. As the meeting adjourned, Kthar found Forlag waiting for him in the corridor outside. You're making a grave mistake, Admiral, the Draconian said, his voice low and dangerous. These creatures are preparing for war. The only question is against whom and when. Kthar met all four of Forlag's eyes with his own. And if they are, General, wouldn't you rather know their capabilities and intentions before committing to a conflict we might not be able to win? Forlag had no immediate answer for that. The Federation diplomatic vessel, Celestial Inquiry, shuddered as it navigated the volatile atmospheric boundary of Acheron 9. Even with its advanced shielding and specialized modifications for extreme environments, the ship struggled against the planet's hostile conditions. Ambassador Lyravale sat rigidly in her command chair, her feathered crest flattened against her head in the Cygnian expression of intense concentration. Around her, the small crew worked with grim determination, their movements precise despite the constant turbulence. Status report, she requested, her melodious voice calm despite the circumstances. "Hull integrity at 87% and declining," reported the pilot, a stoic Medusan whose gelatinous form rippled with bioluminescent patterns indicating stress. Temperature outside the vessel is approaching minus 180 degrees Celsius. Methane storms are interfering with navigation sensors. We're experiencing micrometeorite impacts from frozen ammonia crystals. Life support, Lyra Vale asked. "Stable, but operating at 163% of design capacity," responded Dr. Ecklos, the mission's chief scientist. "We can maintain habitable conditions for approximately 47 standard hours before systems begin to fail. Less if conditions worsen." Lyra Vale nodded. "That should be sufficient. What about the Terran facility?" "Energy signatures indicate it's located in a valley approximately 200 kilometers northeast of our current position," said the sensor officer. "We're designating it Frostbite Peak based on topographical features." "Set course," Lyra Vale ordered. "Maintain our cover story. Full sensor sweep, but passive only. We observe first. Make contact only if absolutely necessary or if our cover is compromised." The ship altered course, pushing through howling methane blizzards that reduced visibility to near zero. The journey took almost 3 hours, the vessel forced to navigate around massive cryovolcanic formations and unstable ice sheets that could collapse without warning. As they approached the coordinates of the Terran facility, Dr. Ecklos gasped audibly. "Ambassador, you need to see this," he said, transferring his sensor feed to the main display. The screen showed a sprawling complex built into the side of a massive ice mountain. Unlike the open-air facility on Tartarus 4, this one appeared more enclosed, with reinforced structures extending deep into the ice itself. But what caught everyone's attention were the humans moving about on the surface. Dozens of them traversed near-vertical ice walls with minimal equipment, driving primitive-looking spikes into the frozen methane and using them to haul themselves upward. Others navigated through whiteout conditions without any visible navigational aids. Some appeared to be deliberately diving into partially frozen methane pools, timing their entries between eruptions of cryo geysers that could flash freeze exposed flesh in seconds. Most disturbing of all were the shard crawlers. These native silicon-based predators resembled metallic spiders the size of small vehicles, with crystalline exoskeletons that perfectly camouflaged them against the ice formations. The Federation had classified them as apex predators too dangerous to approach. The humans were hunting them, not merely defending against them, actively tracking, engaging, and capturing them in some kind of training exercise that combined combat skills with xenobiological study. "This defies all survival protocols," Dr. Ecklos whispered. "They're treating one of the most dangerous predator species in the charted galaxy as training equipment. More importantly," added Security Chief Orn, "they're demonstrating combat techniques specifically adapted to silicon-based life forms. Techniques that would be effective against several Federation member species." Lyra Vale's crest rippled with concern. "Let's not jump to conclusions. Continue observation, full recording of all activities. We need to understand the scope and purpose of this facility before." An alarm cut her off. "We're being scanned," the sensor officer reported, their voice rising in pitch. "Multiple directed energy pulses, pattern consistent with advanced life form detection technology. Have they penetrated our shields?" Lyra Vale demanded. "Unknown, but probable. These scans are unusually thorough." "Hold position," Lyra Vale ordered. "Maintain our cover story. If they make contact." "Incoming transmission," the communications officer interrupted. "Audio and visual, Federation standard frequencies." Lyra Vale straightened her diplomatic robes and adjusted her translator. "Accept the transmission." The main screen shifted to show a human female. She appeared to be middle-aged by human standards, with weather-beaten skin marked by several prominent scars. Her eyes were a startling pale blue that seemed to look through rather than at the camera. Despite the presumed freezing temperatures, she wore only light cold weather gear. "Unidentified vessel," the woman said, her voice crisp and authoritative. "This is Commander Eva Rostova of Terran's Special Environmental Training Facility, Frostbite Peak. You've entered restricted space. Identify yourselves and state your purpose." Lyra Vale activated the prepared response. "This is Ambassador Lyra Vale of the Galactic Federation Vessel Celestial Inquiry. We apologize for the intrusion. Our ship was conducting research on exotic particle formations in the nearby sector when we experienced cascade failures in our drive systems. We were forced to seek a gravitational anchor to effect repairs." Rostova's expression didn't change, but something flickered in those pale eyes. Amusement, perhaps? "That's quite a coincidence, Ambassador," she replied. "Of all the gravity wells in this sector, you happen to drift toward the only one with an inhabited facility. A facility whose existence isn't public knowledge." Before Lyra Vale could formulate a response, Rostova continued, "But since you're here, and since this presents an interesting opportunity, I'm dispatching a team to escort you to our facility. We can offer technical assistance for your unexpected drive system failures." The subtle emphasis made it clear Rostova didn't believe their cover story for a moment. "That's very generous," Lyra Vale replied, maintaining her diplomatic composure, "but we wouldn't want to impose. Our systems should be operational within." "I insist," Rostova interrupted, her tone leaving no room for negotiation. "In fact, my team is already approaching your position. I recommend you prepare your airlock for visitors accustomed to Acheron IX's natural environment. It would be unfortunate if our atmosphere entered your vessel unprepared." The transmission ended. "They're coming aboard," Security Chief Vorn stated the obvious, his hand moving to his sidearm. "Stand down, Chief," Lyra Vale ordered. "We maintain peaceful protocols. Dr. Ecklos, prepare the decontamination chamber for their arrival. Everyone else, remember your briefing. We are researchers, nothing more." 20 minutes later, the airlock cycled open to admit 5 humans in what appeared to be surprisingly minimal environmental protection gear. Their leader, a tall male with dark skin and startling green eyes that suggested genetic modification, stepped forward. "Lieutenant Commander Jackson," he introduced himself. "Commander Rostova sends her regards and invites you to our facility. We've brought temporary environmental suits for your protection." He gestured to a stack of equipment his team had carried aboard. Dr. Ecklos examined one of the suits with poorly disguised scientific interest. "These appear inadequate for Acheron IX's conditions," he observed. Jackson smiled, revealing teeth that seemed too white and perfect. "They're designed specifically for your physiology based on Federation biological data. They'll keep you alive, though not exactly comfortable. Consider it part of the authentic Frostbite Peak experience." The implied meaning was clear. The humans operated in conditions that required much less protection than what they were offering their visitors. It was both a courtesy and a subtle demonstration of superiority. 4 hours later, after a harrowing journey across the frozen wasteland in Terran transport vehicles that seemed deliberately designed to provide minimal insulation from the elements, the Federation delegation was ushered into Commander Rostova's office within the Frostbite Peak complex. The room was Spartan but functional, with view screens showing various training exercises throughout the facility. Rostova herself sat behind a simple metal desk, reviewing data on a holographic display that she dismissed as they entered. "Ambassador," she greeted Lyra Vale, not bothering to stand. "Welcome to Frostbite Peak. I trust your journey was educational." Lyra Vale's environmental suit, while functional, had allowed enough of the planet's brutal cold to seep through that her feathers were still quivering from the exposure. Nevertheless, she maintained her diplomatic poise. "Commander Rostova, thank you for your hospitality. Indeed, the journey was most illuminating." "I'm sure it was," Rostova replied with a thin smile. Then, abruptly changing tactics, she leaned forward. "Let's dispense with the pretense, shall we? You're not here because of drive system failures. The Federation has discovered our training facilities in the hazard zone and sent you to investigate. Probably after your stealth observer was destroyed at Tartarus 4. The blunt statement left the Federation team momentarily speechless. Rostova's smile widened slightly. Your silence is confirmation enough. So, let me save us both time and answer the questions you came to ask. She stood and gestured to the view screens showing training exercises. Yes, these are military training facilities. Yes, we have dozens like them across what you call the hazard zone, each focusing on different extreme environmental conditions. And no, we're not preparing for war with the Galactic Federation or any known spacefaring civilization. Then what possible purpose? Lyravale began. Preparation, Rostova cut in. Preparation for exogenic variables. For existential-level threats. For things lurking between the stars that your Federation hasn't even imagined yet. She touched a control, and the view screens shifted to show historical footage from Earth. Devastating wars, natural disasters, near-extinction events that humanity had somehow survived. Your species evolved in comfort, Rostova continued. Most Federation worlds are paradise planets by our standards. You never had to fight for every step of your evolution. We did, and it taught us something crucial. The universe is not inherently safe or benevolent. It's filled with threats that appear without warning. And you believe training in environments like Tartarus 4 and Acheron 9 prepares you for these hypothetical threats. Dr. Eklos asked, scientific curiosity temporarily overriding diplomatic caution. We know it does, Rostova replied firmly. Humans who complete our special environmental training can operate effectively in conditions that would kill most species instantly. They can fight without technological assistance in environments ranging from hard vacuum to crushing ocean depths, from radiation zones to temporal anomalies. But why? Lyravale pressed. If not for war with known species, then what enemy requires such extreme preparation? Rostova's expression darkened. Because we've seen things at the edges of explored space that match no known pattern. Because our long-range probes have detected anomalies that suggest intelligences operating under physical laws we barely comprehend. Because every advanced civilization in Earth's history that grew complacent eventually collapsed when faced with a challenge they weren't prepared for. She paused, then added more quietly, and because we nearly destroyed ourselves multiple times before we learned this lesson. Survival belongs to the prepared, not the comfortable. The implications hung in the air between them. The Federation delegation exchanged uneasy glances, each processing this information through the lens of their own species' psychology and history. Commander Lyravale finally said, would your government be open to sharing more specific information about these anomalies you've detected? If there are indeed unknown threats lurking in deep space, perhaps a cooperative approach. When we have conclusive evidence, perhaps, Rostova interrupted. For now, we prepare, and we advise you to do the same, in whatever way suits your species' capabilities. The meeting concluded shortly thereafter, with Rostova providing a surprisingly comprehensive tour of the facility's non-classified areas. The Federation delegation was shown training modules that defied belief. Humans practicing combat techniques in chambers that randomly altered gravitational orientation, endurance trials and simulated temporal dilation fields, xenobiological adaptation exercises with silicon-based life forms. What struck Lyravale most profoundly was not the physical capabilities being developed, impressive though they were, but the psychological conditioning. These humans weren't merely enduring hardship. They were being systematically trained to thrive in it, to take environments that should kill them and turn them into advantages. As they prepared to depart, Rostova handed Lyravale a data crystal. Technical specifications for your drive system repairs, she said with the ghost of a smile. And perhaps some additional information your high command might find enlightening. The emergency session of the Federation High Command lasted for 3 full cycles. Ambassador Lyravale's report, combined with the data crystal provided by Commander Rostova, had triggered the most significant strategic reassessment in Federation history. The implications are clear, Kthar stated, addressing the assembled leaders. The Terrans are not preparing for war with us or any known species. They are preparing for something else entirely, something they believe represents an existential threat to all spacefaring civilizations. And we're supposed to simply take their word for this. General Forlag demanded, though his earlier aggressive stance had notably softened after reviewing the data. These supposed anomalies could be fabrications designed to justify their military expansion. The data appears genuine, Science Advisor Tlani countered. Our own deep space monitoring stations have recorded similar phenomena, though we classified them as instrument errors or natural anomalies. The human data suggests a pattern we missed. Dr. Kyla Miros, the Federation's foremost expert on astral phenomena, highlighted several star charts. These readings from the edge of the Andromeda arm show what appear to be gravitational distortions that follow known physical laws. Similar anomalies have been detected in 7 other locations spanning 3 galaxies. Thar studied the displays intently. The strategic implications are profound. If these anomalies do represent an unknown intelligence or threat, the Terran's preparation methodology suddenly appears less insane and more prescient. So we're considering an alliance with these creatures? Forlag asked incredulously. Beings who voluntarily train in environments that would kill most of us in minutes? Consider the alternative, Thar replied. If there's indeed something out there that concerns a species as resilient as the Terrans, would you prefer to face it alone or with them as allies? The logic was inescapable, however uncomfortable. After another full cycle of debate, the High Command reached a historic decision. The Federation would pursue a formal alliance with the Terran Union, focusing initially on information sharing and joint scientific missions to investigate the anomalies. This is not a decision I ever expected to make, Thar admitted privately to Ambassador Lyra Vale as they prepared for the first official diplomatic meeting with Terran representatives. Aligning ourselves with a species that many find deeply unsettling. They are certainly different, Lyra Vale agreed, her feathers rippling in the Cygnian expression of profound thought. But perhaps that's precisely what we need. The Federation has grown comfortable, Admiral. We build consensus, avoid risk, seek stability above all else. While humans throw themselves into hell for practice, Thar, finish your thought. Exactly. Perhaps the universe needs both approaches to survive whatever's coming. The diplomatic reception took place aboard the Federation flagship Eternal Harmony, a vessel designed to showcase the Federation's technological advancement and cultural refinement. Thar and the High Command had expected to meet hardened Terran warriors, perhaps similar to Commander Rostova or her training cadre. Instead, they were greeted by a delegation of perfectly ordinary-looking humans in formal diplomatic attire. Ambassador Miguel Chun led the group, a slender man with an easy smile and impeccable manners who discussed trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and scientific cooperation with sophisticated charm. The jarring disconnect between these polished diplomats and the nightmare training facilities they represented only heightened Kthar's unease. As refreshments were served, he found himself beside Chun at the reception's edge. Ambassador, Thar ventured, I must admit to some confusion. Your diplomatic corps seems so normal. Chun supplied with a knowing smile. Civilized? A far cry from the training facilities your delegation observed. Precisely, Thar acknowledged. The contrast is striking. Chun sipped his drink thoughtfully before responding. Admiral, humanity contains multitudes. We're not all warriors or extremists. Most of us live ordinary lives pursuing happiness, creating art, raising families. But we've learned through bitter experience that comfort must be balanced with preparedness. He gestured around the opulent reception hall. This is what we protect, the right to peaceful existence. But we never forget that peace must sometimes be defended in the harshest environments imaginable. After a moment, he added casually, by the way, we'd like to invite Federation scientists to participate in our upcoming environmental resilience exercises on one of our milder training worlds. Nothing too extreme, just a small moon with toxic atmosphere and variable gravity. A good first step toward mutual understanding. Thar managed to hide his horror at what humans considered mild training conditions, merely inclining his head in acknowledgement. I'm sure we can find volunteers for such an educational experience. As the reception continued around them, Thar found himself deeply unsettled, not by fear of the humans themselves, but by what they represented, a universe far more dangerous than the Federation had allowed itself to believe existed. The initial panic the High Command had felt upon discovering the training facilities had transformed into something more profound, the realization that the comfortable, orderly cosmos they had imagined was perhaps an illusion. The Federation's future now seemed inexorably linked to these strange, resilient beings who deliberately sought out the harshest conditions imaginable as practice for worse to come. Whether the anomalies at the edge of known space represented an actual threat remained to be seen. But one thing was certain: if such threats did exist, Thar found himself grateful that humans would be standing with them rather than against them. As he watched the human diplomats mingling easily with representatives from dozens of Federation species, Thar reflected that perhaps terror was the appropriate response to discovering what humans were capable of enduring. Not because they themselves were the threat, but because of what their existence implied, that the universe contained horrors that required such preparation. In his quarters that night, reviewing the proposed terms of the human alliance, Thar found himself drawn again and again to the final page of Commander Rostova's data crystal. It contained just one line, a human proverb that seemed to encapsulate their entire philosophy. We do not rise to the level of our expectations. We fall to the level of our training. Whatever was coming from beyond the stars, Thar could only hope that the Federation would learn enough from their new human allies to rise to the challenge when it arrived.